Well, we're going to talk about our skit tonight. In our skit, there is a word that some of you might not know the meaning to the word, but it's very important to our story tonight. The word is sacrifice. That's a long word, isn't it? It's got a beautiful meaning. Now, today, if you had lots of money and you were planning on buying something really special, but you had a friend that was in really bad need of some money, and you chose to give that money to your friend, you made a great sacrifice because you decided it wasn't important for you, but it was important to give to a friend. Now, our lesson, that was about what would happen today. But in Bible times, and our story tonight is taken from the Bible, and it's from the book of Genesis, chapter 22. Now, if I'm looking in my Bible, where am I going to find chapter 22 of Genesis? Old or new? Old. Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, in the Old Testament, God expected sacrifices. And what He wanted His people to do was to offer a lamb on a burnt offering. That was the way that they worshiped. That was their way of showing their love to God. Aren't you glad that when we come to church now, we don't have to offer a lamb on a burnt offering? We had somebody, God's only Son. Who is He? Jesus. He was sacrificed and died on the cross of Calvary. That was for my sins, for all of your sins. So God did away. When Jesus was sacrificed, He was the sacrificial lamb. See that big word? For all of us. So we now, in the New Testament, we don't read about those lambs on an altar being sacrificed. So I want you to be quiet and listen, and you might hear that word, sacrifice, as we do our skit. Thank you.
Boys and girls, we're so glad all of you are here tonight. We hope you can come every night. Our lesson tonight is about Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac. Something unusual happened to Abraham and Sarah. Abraham was 100 years old when this happened, and Sarah was 90. Who knows what that was? What was it?
They had a baby.
They had a baby. That's older than your great-grandmother. But that's part of what our story's about tonight. So I hope everybody opens up their ears really good and gets ready to listen. After many years of waiting, God blessed Abraham and Sarah with a son.
Abraham, I'm so very thankful for baby Isaac. Look at this big boy. He's so happy and he's growing so big. Hi, Jordan. You're going to be tall and strong like your dad, right? Say hi there.
God has surely blessed us with this beautiful child.
He has certainly.
His name was Isaac, and they loved him dearly. They cuddled him, and they fed him, and they played with him, and giggled when he wrapped his little hand around one of their fingers. They laughed when he smiled for the first time, and they were absolutely thrilled when he spoke his first word. But somehow, before they even knew it, and before they knew what happened, he was walking and talking, and Isaac had grown to be a young man. Isaac was the joy of Abraham and Sarah's lives. Like any good father would, Abraham spent a lot of time with Isaac. He taught him to love and obey God. He told Isaac the story about how God had talked with him and had told him to count the stars. He made sure that Isaac knew that he was a very special child that had been promised by God. As Isaac grew, he learned to worship God just as his father Abraham did. Then one day, God himself spoke to Abraham.
Abraham! Abraham!
I am here.
Take your son Isaac, whom you love so much, and go into the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering. I will tell you which mountain to use for the sacrifice when you get there.
Abraham loved Isaac more than anything else in the whole world and would never do anything to hurt his son. But he knew he had to obey God. Early in the next morning, Abraham got up and put a saddle on his donkey. He called to Isaac and 2 of his young servants, and they all went together to chop wood for the sacrifice.
We have a long journey before us. Make ready. Get your bedroll. Get the water. Get the bread.
They packed up their things, then they started on their journey toward the place God had told Abraham to go. For 3 days they traveled.
This looks like a spot to make camp, so make ready. We'll camp here tonight.
They ate the food they had brought with them, and they had to sleep on the ground. On the 3rd day, Abraham woke up and he looked in the distance and saw the place where God was leading him.
Wake up. Get up. Make ready.
Abraham picked up the wood and gave it to Isaac to carry. Then he picked up his torch in one hand and his knife in the other, and they started toward the mountain together.
You stay here. Isaac and I will go together to worship God.
While they were walking, Isaac began to wonder about some things. Finally, he just had to ask.
Father, I have the wood and you have the fire, but where's the animal? Don't we need one for the sacrifice?
Abraham, fully believing that God had everything under control, spoke quietly.
Yes, Isaac, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering.
When they finally arrived at the exact place God had told him of, Abraham started looking for large rocks to build the altar. One by one and carefully he placed one rock on top of another until the job was done. And after that he put the wood which Isaac had carried on top of the altar. Then, after looking around one last time, he had to do the very hardest thing he had ever done in his whole life. He gave Isaac one last hug, and with tears in his eyes, he tied up his son and placed him on the altar. Of course, Isaac did not want to be sacrificed as a burnt offering, and Abraham, as a loving father, didn't want to do it, but they both knew it was very important to obey God, so there was no struggle between them. Abraham picked up his knife. He raised it high in the air above his head. But just as he was getting ready to sacrifice his son, he heard the voice of the angel of the Lord cry out from heaven.
Abraham, Abraham,
I am here.
do not kill your son. Do not hurt him. For now I know that you fear God. You love him more than anything else, even your own son.
Abraham looked up, and there, right in front of him, was a ram caught in the thick bushes. Abraham quickly untied Isaac. And then he caught the ram and used it for the sacrifice. There on the mountain, Abraham and Isaac worshiped the Lord together. They called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, which means God is my provider. The angel of the Lord called from heaven to Abraham a second time, saying,
Because you have done this, and have not withheld even your son from me, I will bless you, and you will have many descendants. And all the nations of the earth will be blessed because of you.
Abraham and Isaac walked from the mountain toward home together, rejoicing that the Lord had provided the ram, and also rejoicing that God had made another great promise to them. Can we give our actors a hand?